Are you telling me there is an intentionally erotic game for the 8-bit portable Sega Game Gear? If we were giving out an award for the sexiest sprite on the system, most people in the audience, if they even knew this system existed, would assume that the award would be won by something incidentally slightly sexy, like this low-resolution 8-bit attempt to capture the jiggling, bouncing body parts of Mai Shiranui. Yes, it's barely recognizable, but this is an adaptation of the Neo Geo arcade fighting game for the Sega Game Gear. But no, there is an intentionally erotic game from the same software developers who developed the strangely romantic shoot 'em up titled Gaiares? How else am I supposed to describe this? To be honest, it seems like with both the Japanese box art and the end of game dramatic interlude, it seems like they were trying to develop an erotic video game for the Sega Mega Drive, and then at some point lost their nerve. Well, 1 year later, they'd found their mojo again, and they made this blatantly erotic masterpiece for the Sega Game Gear, and it wins the award for the sexiest sprite on the system. The easiest way to get rid of this award for the low-resolution Commodore 64 would be to hand it over to the Commodore 64's version of Super Off-Road, Iron Man Off-Road Trucks in the Mud, whatever the hell you want to call this game. A version of it exists on every console, and yes, there was an arcade original that inspired the trend, because the Commodore 64 does indeed present you with its own version of a big-breasted woman in a bikini handing you an award that can be directly compared to the Sega Genesis version and the arcade version, and you can take your pick. I think somehow it cheapens the significance of calling something the sexiest sprite on the system if it is not unique to that system. So I will give the award instead to an incredibly obscure video game, a video game nobody had ever heard of before that now is famous and everyone has heard of because it's being re-released on the Evercade. If I'd made this video just a few days ago, I could have bragging rights as being one of the only people alive who's even heard of this game. But yes, y'all, Insects in Space has nudity on screen, start to finish, and this angel, no matter how few pixels she may occupy on the screen, she gets the award, Sexiest Sprite on the Commodore 64. A lot of you are going to be jumping up and down thinking you know the answer to this next one before I even get into it. The Sega Master System. This is the origin of the sexy nurse trope. The whole Hello Nurse thing predates the Warner Brothers cartoon Animaniacs. The sexy nurse in Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Trap, was the beginning of, I don't know, many a young man's dream. But when you go back and look at the original sprite, this is a depressing reminder that in the 1980s, we all led really deprived lives, man. There's just not much here for the imagination to latch onto. Now, in this video, I am not giving out any silver medals, only gold. But if I were going to recognize a second place finish, it would go to Zillion. There's something about the subtle emotional relationships it establishes between you and various female characters in the game. I can't remember any other video game in which anyone gave a fuck if I died. This makes me want to go back and play the game again so I can feel that there's someone on this earth who cares whether I live or die. That really does something for me, man. But, yeah. Ultimately, either you're first or you're last. And the first place finish goes to Danan the Jungle Fighter. Yes, that's right. A game you forgot even existed, but that has a remarkably subtle and involved romantic subplot in which our muscle man hero, who seems to have stepped out of the ancient past, meets and falls in love with a modern woman. Let's just let the screen do the talking for this once. How do you feel, Linda?
Oh, I'm fine. Is that Gilbus? Is he dead?
As long as there are those who desire the things which people were never meant to have, Gilbus will never truly die.
Greed is endlessly deep, isn't it?
Yes, and for that reason, I will remain here to guard the seal from ever being opened again. But I could use a companion.
Oh, I was hoping you'd ask.
Stay for a while. I have grown rather used to your company. Oh, Danan! Whenever girls fall for me, they always refer to me as having quotation marks around my name, as if they're like not really sure if it's my name or not. That's a sign, fellas. That's a sign that a girl has a real crush on you. Oh yeah, look at this. They're doing the walk of shame. Broad daylight, going over to that empty door. They're going over to that hut. They're heading up that empty door, but then, oh, fade to black. The end. The sexiest sprite on the system, the Sega Master System, Linda from Danan the Jungle Fighter.